Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
As humanity has been on the path of embracing diversity, one last minority is still unrecognized. Experiencers. These are the contactees, abductees, eyewitnesses, and researchers of the UFO phenomenon, paradimensional realms, and contact with other intelligences. Could it be that some protocol, some map, has been created by our visitors to integrate humanity into Paradigm Galactic? Could this be the experiencer path to disclosure? Welcome to Aquarian Radio, Friday night, with Janet Kira Lesson, Karen Christine Patrick, and the Reverend John Pope, and guests on the experiencer path.
Welcome, everybody, to the Experiencer Path. We're recording this on a Friday and hoping everybody's Friday is really chill and relaxed. And we, according to the promo, we should have 2 other co-hosts. John Polk is on an uncertain link hiatus from us. And Janet and Dr. Sasha Lesson are traveling to the MUFON Symposium in Las Vegas. So it's me all by my lonesome with our guest. But you know what? That's great. It's just about good conversation and hearing somebody's story, and it's all good. So let me introduce my guest. She can be my co-host today if she wants. My guest, Elizabeth April, on with us today on the Experiencer Path. Elizabeth April is a professional when it comes to expanding the consciousness you most want to understand. Elizabeth works with individuals who want to comprehend their past, present, and the future, combining a mix of earthly exploration along with a twist of universal truth. A more evolved, profound, passionate, and meaningful life is accessed. Whether you are sitting in her audience watching her YouTube channel or getting an individual reading, the insights channeled through her will leave you feeling in tune with the limitless possibilities which exist within your reality. So with that, I'd like to welcome Elizabeth April. Welcome to the Experiencer Path.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Well, I enjoy always talking about consciousness studies. Lately I've been doing a kind of a re-research on the UFO phenomenon, and it's always interesting to me how people who've been at the UFO research for a while eventually have to come to terms with consciousness, with perception. The people who have the experience of either making contact, being a contactee, abductee, or even seeing a UFO, or even studying them, that's really the what I call weapons of mass destruction. I think they're there to expand our consciousness, because that's what it's really all about. If we have benevolent beings trying to contact us, that would be the one thing they would want us to do, is learn how to expand our awareness and our consciousness. And really the question to me is, who are we? Who am I, right? So what I'd like to have you do is give an introduction to yourself. Take your time, tell us all about you, and then I'll ask you questions after that. So go ahead.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, you know what? You bring up a really great point just to kind of kick off the night, which is that spirituality and energy work and consciousness is synonymous with experiences and abductions and ufology. So a lot of people who have studied UFOs and aliens for a number of years are just now coming to the conclusion that you have to expand your mind, you have to open your consciousness. And a lot of people who have these experiences, who have been abducted, have expanded their mind since their abduction. And that's actually a little bit of what I want to go into with kind of my background and my story. Now, for a lot of people, a lot of my followers, a lot of people around me, they're pretty, I guess, a little bit cautious with me because of my age. So I am so young in this lifetime. So I'm only 25. But, as you know, time doesn't really exist. And I believe that everything is happening simultaneously. So even though I'm only 25, I have so much experience to back the knowledge and information that I have to really share and spread to humanity. So when I was born in this life, at just about 25 years ago, I was born with clairvoyant abilities. So basically born with the abilities to see energies, auras, spirits, and read information, things like that. Now, I was also born with the ability to see extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings. Now, I was taken or abducted a lot when I was a child. I wasn't fully consciously aware of why and who was taking me at the time, but I was definitely aware that something wasn't quite normal. Now, other than that, and other than the abilities that I had, I did have a fairly normal upbringing, and so normal to the fact that I started to really question my reality. When I was about 16 years old, at that point in time, I had shut off any and all of my abilities. So at that point, I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be normal. And so I really dove into a lot of competitive sports. And so, that was really great. And I started to really fit in and have a lot of friends. But once again, and I think as most of you out there kind of know, it's just not enough. It's just not satisfying or fulfilling to lead this normal, mundane life. So at the age of 16, I sought out something more than just these four walls, something more than just school, something more than just this reality. And I sought out my first ever past life regression. Now, for those of you who don't know, a past life regression is simply taking someone into a trance-like state so that they can be aware of who they are and who they have been and pretty much where they've come from. So at the age of 16, during this past life regression, I went into many lifetimes where I was oracles and prophets, philosophers and healers. And in every one of these past lifetimes, I started to realize what my purpose was, why I was here back on this planet again. And I started to realize that my purpose was once again to expand and awaken as many people as possible, spread as much information as possible. And so that was really great. A few years later, I moved off to university. I was 18 years old. And I decided at the age of 18 to really once again take that next step in my spirituality. I felt like I was finally ready to ascend, to move forward. And I went to a 10-day meditation retreat. And this meditation retreat was no talking, very isolated, pretty much you, yourself, and your ego for 10 days. Now, on the second night of meditation, I ended up getting abducted. So once again, I was 18, off at this meditation retreat, and on the second night, I got abducted consciously, extremely consciously, by the tall whites. Now, I'm sure most of you know, but the tall whites are not a very compassionate or emotional species. They are mostly here for technology transfer and to save their own species. So they took me on board their ship, and pretty much from the moment I woke up and saw them standing over me to the moment they put me back in my bed, I was completely and fully aware of the entire experience. And so pretty much during this abduction, there was about 7 to 8 of them standing in front of me, and there was one of them off to the side, and I pretty much kind of got the feeling that he was like the doctor. And so they ended up putting, with this giant machine, they put this chip inside my ear. So they pretty much implanted me with this chip. And later I found out that the chip was there to monitor my vibrational frequency. And what I also found out later is that it was almost as if they were up there on their ship, they were looking down at the planet, and they were looking at a sea of black. And all of a sudden, in this sea of darkness, there was a light. And I happened to be that light. So really, the reason why they took me was from pure curiosity. But I think that all of you know and realize in being experiencers yourself that we also all have predestined contracts to be taken by these interdimensional beings. Now, after I was taken, it wasn't too much of a significance other than the fact that it was an abduction. And so I ended up getting the chip removed, and we can kind of talk a little bit more about that later. But after I had that conscious abduction by the tall whites, I started having extremely vivid recall and extremely vivid flashbacks of myself getting abducted, as myself as a tall gray. So once again, very similar to the past life regression, and I was seeing myself as all of these different lifetimes. After the abduction, my consciousness expanded, and I started seeing myself as an interdimensional being in a past lifetime. And, it got to the point where, I couldn't really control these visions, and I'd be walking in the hallway of my university, and all of a sudden I'd be flashed back to walking in the hallway of a spaceship as this tall, gray, interdimensional being who could do things like time travel and reality shift and, manipulate materials at a vibrational frequency level. And that's when I started to really understand who I truly was. Now, of course, going beyond the energy work, going beyond, the past lifetimes on this planet, I started to realize that I was so much more than just human. I started to realize that I myself was indeed one of these interdimensional beings now living through a human existence. And so part of my purpose here on this planet at such a young age is to help to, first of all, expand humanity's consciousness. Realize that there's so much more going on than just your relationship or just your job or just making money. And the second part to my mission here on this planet is to expand people's awareness to include the fact that yes, indeed, aliens do exist. And even more so, not only do they just exist, but they're actually here. They're already here. There's no such thing as waiting for a landing or waiting for touchdown. They are living and walking and breathing amongst us. And I actually consider myself to be one of them, which is so beautiful in so many ways. And so that's just a little brief history of who I am, where I've come from, a little bit about my story, and a little bit about why I'm here today talking to all of you about who I am and the knowledge and the information that I've gained access to over the past number of years.
That is fantastic, and I, for one, am really glad that at 25 years of age you got that far with knowing who you are and working on that contract. I think that's fantastic. I actually have my youngest child just turned 30, so I'm on the other end of the age spectrum, in terms of probably both of us get ageism, you for being young and me for being older, and both for being women, I suppose, because, I had to go through this long journey of denial to going through mind control systems, and my big awakening process happened by the time I was 45 rather than much younger. And, sometimes I think to myself, gosh, I wish I had gotten this sooner. But on the other hand, I almost daily have an opportunity to look at the systems that keep people from, realizing who they are and having a deep understanding of that. So that was sort of my path. But I would hope that many, many more people in your age bracket, your generation, would get this and get this quick, because this is really the next step for humanity. You make me feel good about the future. Everyone's going to get past the selfie stage, and they're going to eventually get this, I hope, And we're all doing this together, whatever age, whatever stage. I believe the phenomenon, the experiencer path to disclosure, sometimes what I call it, is really not about just special people, but all of us together, awakening co-creationally, not just like a few people, because what good does that do? It really doesn't change anything unless it filters through the whole co-creational, shared mindscape of all of us, and realizing who we are and really having some fun with that. Because I personally, I was just talking to someone the other day, I don't know what I could have done if I did not have my guides come in and talk to me and start to tell me what was what and bring new information into my system, which according to systems theory, that's what changes a system is new information. And then finally opening my eyes to who I am multidimensionally, so that I was able to remember a few lifetimes on other planets and a few, I don't always say past lives because I think we're kind of omni-living, it's always the now, right? And so, I think that getting that expansion of who I am did a lot to help me deprogram the negativity that kind of gets flung at us every day in the human collective. And I guess that would be my first question. So, from your perspective, from your vista, just looking over the landscape of where humanity kind of is right now, what's kind of your, State of the Union or, report from the vista of where is humanity at right now from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's something that I want to note with what you were just talking about, which is regarding the fact that you're like, I wish I knew this stuff at your age. And I actually hear that a lot, but I have to remind people that, first of all, age is irrelevant, like you said. But the other fact is that humanity is awakening simultaneously, and it's awakening together. Those of you who have awakened way before the curve have really gone through some heavy persecution and really heavy low vibrational frequencies because you were against the 99%. So, it was really difficult to awaken, 20, 30, even 50 years ago because the energy and the vibration on this planet was too stagnant. And that actually kind of leads me into where the state of humanity is right now at this point in time. And this is something that I check into often. So since really opening up to my interdimensional connections, I now have a whole slew of interdimensional spirit guides who I can go to at any time, as you know. So half of them are personal spirit guides, and the other half of them are spirit guides for humanity. So I go to high councils, and I reach out to the Galactic Federation of Light all the time. And there's actually a council, a Pleiadian council there, who's the council for security of this humanity, of this planet. And they tell me and they update me a lot of these things. So pretty much once a month, I'll go to the Galactic Federation, ask them what humanity needs to know. And I'm in a very great position right now of having people, I guess, let's just say it, follow me on social media, which means that they get the updates, which means that I get to reach people instantaneously about the updates for humanity, which is so beautiful. And the ETs love that too. And just like this radio is a great mechanism and a great tool to expand and reach out to others, I find social media and the internet world is the same thing. So, where is humanity at right now? This is a very key question. So what I found is that this past year, so this is like 2016, 2017, I've been calling this past year the year of death. Now, I know that sounds quite negative and maybe a little bit alarming, but it's not necessarily death in the way that we perceive it here in this reality, in this dimension, in this physical life. The way that I perceive death is simply one side of a coin. I perceive death in the way that death is only half of the picture. So then what is the other half of the picture to create divine harmony and balance? Well, the other half of the picture would be rebirth. So this entire year has been under the number 9. So once again, 9 is the number of death, and it's also the number of rebirth. And so this entire past year, everyone has been dying, and I don't mean physically, but I mean energetically. So I like to call this an ego death. So all of your old narratives, all of your pre-programming, all of your attachments, reactions, all of your memories, none of that needs to consciously and currently exist in your reality. All of that pre-programming is simply not serving individuals here and now. And the reason being is because when we started to develop who we are and what we think about the world and ourselves, the world was a much different place. The world was actually quite a much lower vibrational frequency. Therefore, we've all developed who we are and our pre-programming and our narratives in a lower vibrational frequency, and we're actually just perpetuating that vibration or that negative reality over and over and over again in our current lives. So for myself, my friends, my family, and all of my clients, everyone has been going through this major and extremely intense restructuring of their reality. So I do a lot of public speaking as well, and the speaking is mostly on the awakening of humanity, what's going on. And one of the main speeches that I've been giving is something called Reinvent Your Reality. So what I'm really trying to do here, and I think a lot of light workers and in-tune spiritual beings are doing at this time, is trying to empower individuals to awaken, yes, but also empower that individual to understand that they have all the answers within themselves. It's no longer a time to look towards the institution, the education, the religion, the government, the monetary systems. We can no longer rely on these systems because now is the time to rely on ourselves as individuals. So this is the time to let go, to release, to let go of the past, of these memories, of these attachments, and to really start to reform the reality that you want to live. So right now, we're going through this major transitional phase of humanity, and everyone is starting to recreate, reinvent, and transition their entire lives. Now, what I believe is that everything at a physical level starts from a non-physical, energetic level first and foremost. Now, this means that any and all health issues, ailments, but also any issues with work, jobs, relationship, money, all comes down to your energy and your vibration. And what I tend to find is that people need to awaken and open up their vibrational frequency first before their reality starts to shift. But once you've opened up your energy, then your reality can shift. And once your reality starts shifting, what I tend to find is that everyone's realities are collapsing in on themselves. And the reality that I speak of is really the main foundations of your physical, of your human life. And the main foundations that I'm talking about here are home and living situation, job and career situation, and relationship situations. So these are the main pillars of our human lives. And what I tend to find right now is that all three of these aspects of our lives have not been serving us to the highest and truest and most authentic state. So people are losing their jobs, they're losing their marriages of 20, 25 years, they're losing all of their friendships in their lives, and they're transitioning, they're moving their homes. Almost all of my clients have had at least one of their main foundations transition and change within the past year. Once again, it's been all about death and rebirth. Now, once you've released all of that old energy, now what? Now what do you do? Now where do you go? This is the time now, once you've released, to start to restructure, recreate, and essentially reinvent your life to live the life that you want to live. Take your power back and understand that the life that you're living is completely under your own control. So if you want a little update of what's going on with the awakening, that's a pretty good overview of what's been going on, what's happening with most people, and really what the next steps are as far as now not settling for your reality, but striving to thrive in your reality is really where we're all getting to, although some people awaken a lot faster and some people take a little bit slower to do so. Everyone's at their own pace. But this is essentially the main transition and the main vibrational frequency energy that's been going on within the past year.
Oh, man, I couldn't possibly agree with you more. I think you nailed it very well, described it very well. A couple things I like what you said. One was that you have personal guides and planetary level guides. I've got that as well. And it's been essential, because, and it has to do with going within or allowing to go within. Famously, we've got this MUFON symposium coming up, and I went to Roswell during the big 70th anniversary festival, saw a lot of T-shirts that said, "The truth is out there." And I went, I don't know if I agree with that. I think the truth is in here. Yeah, right. And then I also like what you said about this death and rebirth process, which is terribly painful until it gets to this crazy over-the-cliff point where you're kind of free-falling, you haven't quite smacked down, and it's like, it's kind of a weird euphoria, too, because I had a situation where I lost most of my possessions, and, at first it was super agonizing, and then my guides were very kind to me and let me know exactly volumetrically what I was going to be allowed to keep in this transition that I went. They literally had me trace my finger about 4 feet off the ground and about, I'd say, a yard wide and a yard deep, over and over and over and over again. And from my old life to my new life, that is literally what I got to keep. And it was, so I had to be very mindful of what was important, and it was family pictures and art supplies. I mean, that was what it really came down to, and that was perfect because I went back, and that happened to be the exact size of my mother's closet. She kept my things for me while I was in transition, and I was stunned when I opened her closet to realize it was exactly that volume of about 4 feet tall and about a yard wide and a yard deep. And I brought all the things to my new situation and started unopening the boxes, and it was really thrilling what I got to keep. I kept mementos from, like one memento from each deceased family member that I had, and I had all these wonderful jewelry making supplies, and I'm now happily doing that. I got to have that back. But I did go through that dematerialization. What my guys were also telling me, it's letting go of matter, of the things that were like weighing me down, that I thought were important, and helping me learn a lesson of what really is important. And yeah, that's a necessary process if we're going to let go of an old system that is not serving us. I study a lot about global economic issues, and I think that the monetary system, which is based on scarcity, because you don't count things that are abundant, you count things that are scarce, so it has people thinking that they have to invest in war. Somebody today argued that we need a good war. I was like, no, I don't think I agree with that, to shake everything up. And it was a common belief, being the granddaughter of, Depression-era grandma, was a common belief that it literally was a war that ended the Great Depression and started a rebuilding process. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that a negativity negates another negativity. Right. But one of the things my guides asked me over and over again in the middle of this big transition, and I just thought it was loss, death, loss, death, that's all I could focus on. They kept asking me, what do you want? And I was like, what kind of question is that? I don't even know what I'm allowed to keep. What do you want? What do you want? They bugged me for weeks. And I finally, I do journaling, intuitive journaling, contactee journaling, and I wrote down kind of what do I want. I want positive relationships. I wanted to expand more into these areas of understanding contact and all of this stuff. And I wanted to be able to have whatever I do contribute as positively as possible. And that is exactly where I'm at now. But what do we want is a valid question, even in the middle of quote unquote losing everything.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what a lot of the information that comes channeled through me comes down to for my clients. It's like once you've released everything, and it's funny that, all your material possessions kind of went away because, or you had to give them away, but because I tell a lot of my clients who have attachments to material possessions, and I said, look, like even though you're not moving, you have to go through your entire home and you have to ask yourself, pick up these items and ask yourself, does this item, does this object serve me? And if you don't get a yes right away, then it's time to let that go, right? And then after the whole release, that's when you say, okay, now what, right? And that's when you really got asked, okay, well, what do you want? Now that you're done releasing all of that baggage, now what do you want? What do you want to create? And it's so beautiful. I loved your answer, just, creating a positive environment, living through my purpose by like helping experiencers. And I think that that's at that point when you have released enough, that is all we want, is to share the gifts that we have. And that's a testament to your vibrational frequencies, that there was nothing there that was fear-based or like scarcity or survivalistic, and like you mentioned, that's what the majority of this society, rests on, which is that survivalistic scarcity mindset. And it's also interesting that you studied the global political system, because that's what I majored in university, was global political economy. So understanding where the power lies at the global level, and it's incredible. So once you understand the corruption of the system, now it's time to power through it, and not really feed into that reality, which is also so important. So yeah, so that's great. It feels like you're totally right in line with your path when you explain all of those things. So it's beautiful.
I have another question, since I know that you've studied global economic stuff. That's fantastic. Yeah. Sometimes in the love light community, I think I'm one of the few weirdos that wants to look at the negativity of the monetary system. Yeah. But I'm second generation conspiracy theorist. My father, when I was literally 5 years of age, between 5 and 7, I was hearing about the Illuminati, the Federal Reserve, fiat currency. This was discussed in my home when I was very young. And so I went for many, many years, and nobody even knew what that was about. And then, of course, it's now kind of flushed out, and there's a lot more discussion about it. So, I'm aware that we need to go from a system that values scarcity, and it puts the United States in particular into desiring a permanent war economy where you, I hate to say this, but kill people and break things is the path to wealth for a certain class of people. And I've been told unequivocally, and believe me, I've grilled them on this, my guides have unequivocally said that we are absolutely going to transition from scarcity mindedness, which is not serving everybody, pretty much. It's really not even serving the people at the top, because they've got to become monsters to maintain it. So it's not spiritually serving them for sure. To an abundance-based economy. And I've been watching cryptocurrency in particular because I have a computer background. So that's creating a scarcity currency through math, limiting a certain number of these bitcoins, as it were, and, that becomes the scarcity. There's only so many. So I'm just curious, so I'm really forcing myself and really trying to concentrate what are the transitional tools from right now when the system kind of isn't working for everybody. Like, what are the steps and stages till we get to, a realization? And I always tell my toaster story, because when I first got married to my first husband, I got a toaster, I think at Walmart, and it didn't last. It broke in about a year and a half. And my mother-in-law had gotten a toaster just after World War II, and they went from building tanks to building toasters, and she had this toaster that she'd had for years and years and years, and it was built on a completely different scale than mine, which was meant to break planned obsolescence, is what they call that, right? And I think during that relationship, I think I went through, 8 toasters, and she's still using the same one. I'm like, what is the deal with that? Planned obsolescence is one of those things that creates that scarcity of you can't get a decent toaster for a decent price. Like, what are some of the things that you see happening that indicates that we're going to go from this entire, it's totally tolerable to have a toaster that breaks, to, hey, we shouldn't do that. That's filling up the landfills with broken toasters, What are some of the sort of hopeful things that you see from that geopolitical economic world that lets you know that we're going to transition?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So a couple of things here. It's really twofold, the transition that you're talking about at a socio-economic global political level. And the first aspect of this, which I think everyone's just aware of, is consciousness, right? So the first shift that we all need to make, which is happening before the physical. So once again, energy moves faster than physical. So at an energetic level, people are waking up left, right, and center, and it's pretty baffling to see the amount of people waking up. Actually, it's very impressive to see the amount of people waking up. And so all we need, the first kickoff, is the awareness. We need to be aware of the corruption. We need to be aware that we are being fed lies every single moment of every single day from any sort of mass media news outlet and from really any sort of politician. I'm sorry, left or right, doesn't matter. We're being fed lies, and people need to start realizing this. Thankfully, and not so thankfully, we've got good old Donald Trump, who is feeding us all of these, mixed stories, lies, false truths, whatever you want to call it. But he's actually, through this chaos that he's created, he's actually really brought to light how corrupt the system is and how we're just being lied to. And now everyone is questioning everything. This is a huge step in making this transition from the political economic system that we've known for years and years and years to a much more holistic system that is providing something for everyone. So first of all, people are waking up. The corruption that is exponentially growing at this time is also helping people wake up to say, hey, that's not right. We can't treat people like that. Our president is racist, or what have you. So it's really starting to open up those fronts through the corruption. Now, as far as like an economic transition, the biggest thing that I've come across with my understanding, channeling, and research is the fact that there is something called, I believe it's called standardized income. And this is based off of the understanding that when we are born, and I know for a fact that this is North America, I'm not totally sure about the rest of the world, but I'm pretty sure it's all the same. But when we're born into a country, we are rightful owners of parts of that country, which means that we get a percentage and a cut of any and all environmental aspects. So water, land, food, agriculture, lumber, all of that. We are rightful owners of that because we are born in that said country. And that's actually something that has been written into the Constitution since day one. This is just knowledge, but no one talks about it because it's not general knowledge. So what some organizations are doing, and this is the most hope I've ever seen as far as an economic transition, which is that there's these huge organizations, some of them small, some of them bigger, organizations who are working on creating standardized income, which means that per month, everyone gets a check from the government for their rightful ownership of part of the land of that country, and they get a check from the government. Now, they're playing around with how much money everyone gets in order to make it fair for everyone. And what they're pretty much saying is that people who make a higher income get a lot less and sometimes have to pay into it. Usually that's the top 1% has to actually pay into the system. But everyone under the top 1% gets something from that in varying degrees. Obviously, the less you make, the more that you get because it's a standardized income. Everyone needs to be equal. And what that's doing is providing a standard for life. It's providing a standard for food and water. It's providing a standard for shelter and education. And it's providing a standard for a way of living. And so this is what I've seen. Now, I know for a fact that both Canada and the States have chosen a few cities out there to kind of like do a test run of this standardized income. So they've chosen a couple of the smaller cities, even little townships, and they've given everyone a standardized income. And what they've started to realize is that, they were worried that people would stop working. But of course, it's not enough to just quit your job. And of course, what are you going to do once you do quit your job? So they found that people just continued to work, but they took more time off. They upped their quality of life by, increasing the fruits and vegetables in their meals because they could afford it and all of that great stuff. So they've really noticed a lot of positive changes in an economic way, but also a social way as well. And that right there is like a huge glimmer of hope for me in the transition of the economic structure of this society. So everything needs to collapse before it is rebuilt. And right now it's like, oh, well, that's the ideal utopian society. How do we get there? And it's so difficult to realize how we get there if we're so stuck in the corruption. And this is what I like to tell everyone as well. Stop feeding the fear, right? It's not helping anyone, especially not us, if we watch the news every day and we get so concerned with who's doing what, who's not doing something, and all of the war and the fear and the corruption and the violence that's out there, the more and more we watch that, the more we feed into it, the more we're actually co-creating this fear-based reality. So instead of focusing on that, how about you focus on the solution of the corruption? And part of that solution is this standardized income. The more people are aware that this is actually possible, that we are actually rightful landowners to the country that we were born into, the more that everyone understands that, the more empowered we are, and the more that this is just normal knowledge and standardized knowledge throughout all of the population, which means that we can now start implementing these things. The more people that know about it, the more change and the faster that change happens. So that's kind of my take on the global political economic scale and kind of where we're going with that.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that term, but I'm going to look that up. What I had been following is the basic income guarantee, which is kind of a similar thing in that you would have at least a floor to poverty. So everyone would get a certain amount, hopefully enough to live on. And that's the big debate. What numbers would that have to be for people to live on? And where they have implemented and tested it, and has been tested by the UN and by individual countries, exactly what you're saying is that it had unexpected positive side effects.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them I liked was I've always been a volunteer, a community volunteer, and we're at this point. I worked for a volunteer center as a receptionist for a while, so I met a lot of volunteers and watched the struggles of the organization. And one of the things that I was hearing, particularly the older volunteers who were on a fixed income, were telling me, I just can't do this anymore because I can't afford the gas to get over to my volunteer position. So sometimes we were working with them on ideas for that. But they, when somebody volunteers, there's not just their time involved, but also the means to do it and the financial means to do it. And as we've had this steady squeeze of our incomes, particularly people on fixed incomes, we're literally losing a lot of wonderful human power that could be applied to a lot of human problems. And my general philosophy is, yes, you do have people who be lazy, they'll play video games all day and take drugs and whatever. I think that's a small portion of people that we should basically consider as very mentally ill. What I like to say is human beings get up and do stuff. I know that I've always done that when I've been employed or not employed. I'm going to be getting up and doing stuff. And I know a lot of people would, if they're empowered to do so, most people know about problems in their community that they could help. They just need to be facilitated to do so. And it would just suddenly release a lot of human potential to apply to problems. And so I think that kind of thinking, and I love that, the solution-based thinking, yes, we have to look at the corruption and we have to say, that's wrong, we don't want to have that be anymore or participate with it. And then let's go, for instance, a good example. I know that you know about quantitative easing if you've studied economics, and I heard an astonishing statistic about quantitative easing. A lot of people don't know what that is, and they should look it up. It's basically a very huge sum of money. It's basically started out as $80 billion a month that's given to the banks to keep them solvent. And then it's been reduced to a mere $60 billion a month in the United States. If they would have taken that particular funding and applied it to some kind of basic income, I think every man, woman, and child, a citizen in the United States, it would have been somewhere $200 to $300 a month, which would, it wouldn't have gotten you completely supported, but it would have been a good step in the right direction. But the total over the course of when they started the program, which would have meant that every man, woman, and child in the United States would have had $50,000. That would have gone a long way to help people. We lost a home. It would have helped us save our home. Things like that. People who had storm damage could have rebuilt. People could have gone and got education or gotten some training. The health insurance could have improved, and like you were talking about, our food could have improved, because that's really where all health kind of does start. Let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food, right? And the food quality is going down, and people want to eat organics often, better quality food, or even set up some way to grow their own food, but they don't have the means to do it, and that would have helped. So, yeah, I think some kind of recognition, and because I'm a geeky, nerd, basically I know that. The other thing kind of breathing down our necks in a potentially positive way, but it's looked at negatively, is applied artificial intelligence and robotics and further automation. We've had a pretty hard trend of automating more and more things. And just to illustrate that point, one of my career, choices for a period of time was telephone customer service. And, I basically watched the place where I was working need less and less, people to work there, the more, the telephone robot was able to do for the customer. So we're looking at very hard data of, robotics coming in. And the sort of one job that's sort of the blue-collar job that's the highest paid in pretty much every state of the union, surprisingly, has been driving a truck. And now we have this experimentation by the large trucking corporations for the, robot driving the truck, the driverless trucks. And it's going to be implemented very quickly. They've already had convoys of driverless trucks in kind of a train setup. So they have like 5 trucks, and the front truck does have an operator to monitor things. It's basically 5 trucks traveling together, have already traveled across Europe and proved the concept has a lot of merit. So there goes a very difficult job, but yet another job to robotics. And that could be a really good thing if it was serving humanity and preventing people from being injured and all of that. But it's a negative thing if we think that the job thing is going to be how everyone gets provided for, and we're already where that's not true. It's not working. The numbers don't work. So, but I agree with you. Focus on the positive. Was there any more you wanted to say about that? Because that's one of my favorite topics. I'm so glad that you can speak to it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, completely. I think we're on the exact same page with all of that and with the robotics and everything. And honestly, I don't think robotics are a negative thing. I just think that we need to change with the times. And if we want to evolve and grow as a society, then we need to start educating our population more on technology so that they can be a part of the robotics expansion rather than be left by the wayside, right? So this is the problem, is that technology is happening too fast. We don't have the laws or the amendments or the, reform to keep up with the technology transfer. And that's where jobs are being lost and they're not being replaced. So I completely agree with you. And it definitely is one of my favorite topics as well. So I'm glad that we got to touch upon it.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about the esoteric side of the Internet for a minute, because the Internet, I was my first foray into working was the fact that I went to computer science training in college. I got an illness. I wasn't able to finish college, but I was able to be partners in a technology firm for 20 years, really watching the Internet, or just our whole technology base grow and change and morph and become very interesting. The actual biggest thing on the planet built by volunteer labor is the Internet, despite the fact that we have all these platforms like Google and Facebook and all these platforms that are companies. The content, 90% of the content is provided by somebody who writes a web page about they really like dogs, some kind of breed of dog, or they really enjoy some kind of literature or whatever. It's for the love of it, and I think it's the best model for the future of work. It's going to be, you'll get supported in your basic needs, and now you are freed up to think about what do I want? It's back to that question again. What do I want to do? And they had a referendum in Switzerland on the basic income, and they had the biggest banner ever made on the planet. You could see it from space. It was this huge banner. What would you do if your income was taken care of? It was a thought question for people to experiment and say, what would you? Unfortunately, I'm doing that right now. I unfortunately had injuries on the job as a caregiver, so I'm not ashamed to say I'm on disability, taking care of my health. So I do have my basic needs provided for. So I am doing, what it is I want to do, which is talk to people like you and give them a place to share, and also to support the experiencer movement, which I think is going to be a huge deal. It is a huge deal. It's going through some growing pains right now, but I think it's going to be this, as one of my friends says, a tsunami of realization and truth. So I think that's kind of important. But the internet is interesting to me because when you kind of go in the deep dark history of it, deep dark not in the negative, just mysterious. Ostensibly, we got some of the mechanical components from crashed UFOs, that led to the technology of chips and solid state production over tubes. Everything was run by tubes back in the day, and it was because we had the silicon chips being invented and fiber optic stuff that was literally back engineered from crashed UFOs. I also think that the other thing the internet does is it allows us to peer into information in its natural habitat. So when you were talking about how manifest reality happens from an energetic level, I think we have a model to look at that. So, for instance, I just ordered some jewelry findings, and it's just in my imagination now that it's possible I'm going to have them. And then in a couple of days, a truck's going to pull up, and then I'm going to have them. I mean, it's manifesting in that by that route, right? And from that, I can do something fun and creative with it. But we literally have this virtual world which has opportunity and pitfalls in it. And I think, as I understand the technology of our ET friends, their technology is kind of becomes thought form based. It literally becomes more a function of thought, and that's even something we can manifest through our human instrument. So I was just wondering what your thoughts on all that smattering of stuff.
Yeah, actually, I'm really glad that you brought this up because it's so funny that we have very similar interests because I am so fascinated with something like the internet, like so fascinated. And it baffles me, and people don't blink an eye at it, So for me, my concept of the internet and my perception of the internet is that it is a dimension within itself. It is a completely different reality altogether, and it's pretty cool. So the two things that make up this third physical dimension are time and space. Now, what doesn't exist online, what doesn't exist on the internet? Time and space, right? You can get lost for hours online, and time doesn't really exist. There is no time to do things. There is no time to eat online. It is just what it is. It's always going. It never ends. And then there's no space as well, which I love, and I guess both of us love so much because no matter where you are across the world, we can connect with each other because space does not exist with the internet. It's so beautiful. So I view the internet and the online world as another dimension altogether, which is really cool. Now, half of us are really scared of it, like, the powers of the internet and the fact that it could one day, and possibly already is, be a sentient being, right? A conscious, living, existing thing. And, the other half of us are using it to our advantage, which is, understanding that we can connect to so many people, whereas 40 years ago, that wasn't exactly possible. So, my industry as being this, awakener, life coach, psychic, cosmic intuitive, whatever you want to call me, it's so much easier for me now to reach everyone, to reach the masses because of the internet, which is so beautiful. Now, the other thing, too, that you were mentioning was alien technology. I absolutely could not agree with you more in saying that all of our technology, all of our advancements came from aliens. Going back to ancient Egypt with hieroglyphs, language, symbology, mathematics, sacred geometry, that all came from ETs. And if it didn't come directly from them, say from a ship that was fallen or what have you, then it's been people like Albert Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci that have actually channeled interdimensional beings to give them a lot of those inventions and a lot of that information. So absolutely ETs and higher forces are behind these things. But to note on extraterrestrial technology, it's really cool. As you were saying, this technology is thought form based. And really what I like to call it is conscious technology. So our consciousness stimulates those pieces of technology. It could be weaponry, it could be vehicles, it could be spaceships, it could be a food processing machine, it could be anything. And our consciousness stimulates that and energizes that. Now it's really cool because we're actually, as a humanity, we're getting to that point, which is very cool, kind of scary because who knows, what happens when a society isn't quite at the level it needs to be and it has too much technology. I mean, I think we saw that with ancient Atlantis. But yeah, so what they're developing right now, and I want to say it's either like Apple or Google or like, some big company like that, technology company, is developing an app or I guess a phone that can read your thoughts, or your thoughts can be projected onto the phone and can actually start writing what you're thinking, which is a huge step. And all you do is attach these little tiny electrodes at the back of your head, and the electrodes send a pulse signal to the phone, and the phone picks up on whatever that signal is. Now, of course, this technology is not out there yet, but they are working on it, and this is a huge step in the right direction for technology expansion, and the fact that technology should never be an external thing to us. It should always be a part of us. And for me, I'm a millennial, I'm young, whatever. Technology is totally my life, and I love it, but I hate it just because I am an old soul. But I remember, getting into technology thinking that even something like an iPhone was quite archaic. And the reason being is because I'm a little bit more ET than I am human. And for me, to type something on a phone or to have something that's external to you just didn't make sense. I just can't wait to get to the point where technology is a part of us so that we can harmonize those frequencies rather than having something that's so foreign to our vibration. A lot of people are scared that technology will take over us. They will become sentient beings. They will want to take over the planet. I've never seen that as a reality. I'm sure there are many realities out there where that is a part of that reality. But all I see for us, this humanity right here, right now, is the co-creation with technology and allowing technology to be our friend rather than our foe.
Oh, man, we are simpatico. I think that was great. and I want to remind people that something like what you were talking about, where your thoughts could be put onto a screen, is going to be life-altering, short of cures and miracle technology for medical uses for disabled people. Because my youngest child was born with multiple disabilities, and when she was 9, she had a surgery that caused a reaction, and so she was lost the power of speech, which was pretty devastating since she already had cognitive issues and she already can't walk. So I was really upset because it was like, okay, I'd already conceded those losses that was, with the current technology wasn't going to be resolved anytime soon, but I was just not ready to have her lose the ability to express herself. And we were very, very fortunate that she did recover. It was just a temporary reaction to a major surgery that she had. But, it made me think quite a bit about people who are in those situations, that are imprisoned in their own body, And I know a lot of people are afraid of transhumanism, but I'm kind of not. And part of the reason is this concept of thought form. I was involved in a research group where one of the leaders was with part of the government that was terrified of us blending with our technology and the transhumanism situation. But when I kind of walked through what that was about, I realized that our technology really isn't going to replace us is so much as it's going to teach us who we are, because we've kind of forgotten what a human instrument's capable of doing from the distant past and from certain groups that have really worked on consciousness. They're able to bilocate, they're able to heal diseases, they're able to levitate. I mean, the human beings literally have the potential of being Superman, being the X-Men. We have a lot more potential that because of our, sort of thought mechanism, control systems that we have that is reductionist, where it tells us we're just whatever, just us, the human, and that means something small. That's not true. And the technology is going to be there to remind us of who we are and what we're capable. And then when I cognate what the ETs do, for instance, that their ships are literally have a consciousness. They're literally alive and have a consciousness, and that allows the navigator and the ship to co-create, the journeys that they take and the amazing feats of, flight that people see when they look up in the sky. And one time I was looking at a little light in the sky, and I thought, I was coming on the same trajectory as the International Space Station, and I went, it's the International. I wasn't thinking it was a UFO. I was just, that's the International Space Station. And then it did a right angle turn right then, and I went, that's not the International Space Station. It's something else. How does technology, when my partner Brett and I are going to be talking about UFOs in October at the Gallup Film Festival, and we're going to be talking. We decided to bring all of this consciousness-based stuff in, or I know for sure I am, because I think we're talking about co-creation with all of the, basically everything that is made, every rock, every tree, every physical object is already part of consciousness. Some people say it's a quantum hologram, but the medium is consciousness. So, that's how come we can feel, some of us are empathic and can feel the spirit within nature, within trees, within rocks, within the air and the wind. And part Native Americans, it's a big deal for that side of me. But, I mean, even the objects that we make get imbued with a certain amount of consciousness to them as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so we don't need to be afraid of it. We just need to I don't want to say be in mastery of it, but just if we're becoming aware of our own who we are, self, the multi-dimensional person that we are, we'll grow into whatever technology we're participating with. So if it becomes smart and smarter, sometimes I say I have a smarter phone, not just a smartphone because I got to learn how to use it all the time, different apps. But that we're going to become more expansive. We're going to grow with it. I think that's how the thing works. And so when we see mature races, and that's the real reason why we're kind of warned off of seeing, talking about what's out there, what kind of races are out there, is because it's comparative anthropology. In other words, we see how we function still in a scarcity-based, fuel-based, limited, kind of polluting society. We've got to go out of that. When we see those other races, that gives us a viewpoint of where we could be if we let it happen. So I don't know. I'm just commenting now. There's no question in there, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's I completely agree with that, and it is interesting with the other races and not being fully aware of who they are or how they function or what they do. It's because, like you said, we have to overcome our own plights first in order to expand ourselves. It's like looking at a box and realizing that that's all that exists unless you start to stand back and look outside of that box, right? So it's just like these layers of energy, consciousness, spirituality that we need to peel back in order to ascend to the next level. So absolutely, that's very interesting, and it's so nice to hear someone else's perspective and once again be validated in saying, oh, that's great, someone else thinks like this, So, and I think that, this radio show and, my public talks, like, we are out there to help people expand and awaken and understand that, hey, this isn't crazy, this is actually the truth.
Oh, yeah. It's fun to talk with kindred spirits. It's very, very encouraging. And I get to do that more and more in my life. And it's one of the great things about my stage of life right now is I really have opportunities for that. And so we were talking about, the sort of the collective, where the collective is at. But I think, one of the things that technology does is it empowers the individual. So it's sort of like the I don't want to say battle, because I don't want to really couch it in those terms, but the challenge, I think, is the individual's awakening process. I think we tried collectivism too soon in our growth. We tried to make big countries and big movements and all kinds of things before we really validated the individual person is not just supposed to be the cog in the wheel of somebody else's system. It's supposed to be a whole archic. So I try to tell people about the difference between hierarchy, which is how we run most of our systems, and holarchy, which is empowering each individual person or part of the whole thing so that it functions well independently and also co-creationally. So I'm just very interested in the kind of tools that you've been able to use with individual people, and maybe some stories of different individual people that you saw them processing and having their aha moments, and your practice. What kinds of things do you do to help people, individuals?
Yep, absolutely. So, another really great distinction that you made, once again, between the micro and the macro, between the whole and the individual. And you're right. I mean, it's not necessarily a battle, but it's definitely a power struggle that's going on out there between conforming and finding your own thing. And I think that, you hit it nail on the head when you were talking about how everyone now has to really deal with their individual. And we are, it's not that, okay, so it's interesting. So we have to be individualized in order to understand the process of the whole, right? So everything at a micro level is also likewise at a macro level, as above, so below. So everything is a mere reflection of one another. And so it's so important for us to first look within before we can look external. And you're right when you said that everything's kind of reversed. We went into the collective way too soon, and everyone's been basing who they are based on the rest of society, when that's actually reversed. Everyone needs to be basing their perspectives of the rest of society on who they are and how they feel about themselves first and foremost. But our society does not really celebrate the individual, but indoctrinize the individual and categorize and label the individual and then judge the individual for being individual, right? It's like being the black sheep amongst all the white. So it's so important for us to start to wake up at an individual level. Now, like what my practice looks like, and it has changed throughout the years, but in a 1 hour long session, I pretty much go into anything and everything that that person needs to know and realize at that time. But of course, going through so many people, there are themes that occur, especially since we are all connected. So the theme that I really have realized, especially in the past year or so, is that everyone needs to go into the past before we can look into the future. And this is a really interesting concept because people are like, oh, you're a psychic, right? Okay, you're going to read me my future? Oh, okay, you're going to tell me when I'm going to be rich? And I'm like, nope, it's actually not like that. I like to call them more of like awakening or expansion readings rather than psychic readings, because it's not just about the future, because existence and life is not just about the future. It's actually about the present. And in order to understand the present moment more, we have to go back. We have to understand who we are in this present moment based on the narratives and the pre-programming that we've developed over the number of years in this lifetime. But what I've realized in having the capacity to go beyond time itself is that a lot of our issues as an individual human actually stem from many, many past lifetimes as well. And think about living through an entire lifetime and learning one lesson and end up not learning that, and then going back into another lifetime and learning the same lesson all over again. I mean, I've had clients who have potentially lived 700 years in learning one lesson. right? So 7 lifetimes in trying to learn the same lesson, and over and over and over again, they stop themselves. So in order to update yourself and move forward in life and fully move forward at a deeper level, we have to go into the past. So my sessions are set up from the past, going into the present moment, what's going on with you right now, and kind of what got you there from the past, and then moving into the future. Okay, so now that you understand who you are based on the past, now that you have the right tools to release the past, now that you fully get who you are in the present moment, now what do you want to do with all of this knowledge moving forward? So some of the sessions are mainly focused on the past because people can be really caught up in that, attachments, expectations, things like that. And then some people are way too caught up in the future, and I have to bring them back down to the present moment saying, hey, you can't manifest anything if you're not fully in the present moment. So, I do an aura chakra scan of someone, and I can see if they have any blocks, imbalances that they need to be aware of. I tell them exactly where that block or imbalance is coming from. Once again, could be this lifetime, could be a past life. And then we go into past lifetimes. So like you're damaged in your sacral chakra, you're damaged in your emotions. Where is that coming from? Okay, it's coming from this past lifetime where, you were a nun and this happened to you and what have you. And we go into the whole story. And a lot of individuals, in never even conceiving the idea of past lifetimes, their jaws are dropped in how similar the lessons and how similar the actions and reactions are of themselves in their past life to themselves in this lifetime. So once again, everything is paralleled. And in order to understand the macro picture of who you are and why you're here and what your soul is all about, you need to understand everything. So we go into those past lifetimes. I do the body scan, the energy scan. And then after all of that, pretty much after sorting out all of the problems, right, all of the issues, all of the imbalances, all of the challenges, all the lessons that individual is going through, that's when we start to create solutions. Okay, so this, and this is imbalanced. What can you do to bring a solution to that? I ask that person's spirit guides. They give me tangible solutions in the present moment that person can take home with them. So I actually call that homework. It could be a cord-cutting release letter. It could be journaling to yourself. It could be hugging yourself every night. It could be skipping down the street. It could be joining an art class. It could be anything. But usually it's very positive, very productive, and it is full of solutions for that individual. And then, of course, once we're all done that, then we can say, okay, so now you're in the process of release, and now you're in the process of rebirth. What does that rebirth look like? Where is your passion? Where is your purpose? What hasn't been serving you and what will serve you? And that's really what we focus on as well. So it's kind of like the full picture. I mean, a lot of people tell me, I can't believe what you can get into in an hour. Because as you know, I talk quite fast, especially when I channel, to get through all the information as quickly as possible so that we have, they have all the information and the tools. So at an individual level, what I would suggest to people is critical thinking is key. Critical thinking is all about awareness. What do we have to be aware of? We have to be aware of our old reality. We have to be aware of how we're thinking, and what we are infiltrating and putting into and injecting into our reality, right? Because as you know, Karen, all of our thoughts create our reality, and a lot of people they're aware of it at maybe an intellectual level, but they aren't aware of it at an energetic level. So they continue to do it, and it's easy for people to sit in their pre-programming because they don't actually have to put the effort into consciously thinking. And that's the biggest problem I find in society at an individual level is that, oh, well, my job thinks for me. My boss tells me what to do. Oh, well, my wife at home, tells me to do the dishes, so I'll do the dishes. Oh, the TV says that there's a war going on, so I'm fear-based, And it's like everything in this society is in place so that we don't have to think at all. So that's really what the number one thing that I can say to people is like, if you want to change your reality, if you want to change your life, if you want to live the life that you want to live, then you have to start thinking for yourself. You have to start questioning absolutely everything, especially questioning yourself. And only through that questioning will the answers be brought to you. If you don't question anything, you will continue to live life in a haze, let's just say. So Yeah, so it's a little overview of like what I do for individuals, how I can help individuals, and also what individuals can do to start helping themselves.
Well, I'm curious. I'm going, do me. If I shared a past life with you, and you can model that and just kind of show what you do, would you be able to do it in a short? But you don't have to take an hour. Just in a short bit of time. Yeah. Would that be just fun? Okay. Because it came up yesterday in a discussion about past lives, and what happened to me was I was going through Chicago, and I was going from Washington State down to Texas, and I happened to have to stop in Chicago. The train made a mistake and couldn't get me to my next train on time, so they paid for me to stay in a room in Chicago. And I am going from the cab back, using the cab from the hotel back to the train station, and we went through this street, and we got stuck at the light for quite a long time, and I looked down this alleyway, and I remembered something. And what happened was, when I was a younger person in this lifetime, I took up saxophone. I played the saxophone, and I took to it like a duck to water. I mean, I got really good really fast. But one thing that was interesting was I used the old-style methods of playing the saxophone. Got in trouble with my instructors a lot of times because I was not doing the modern way of playing it. I was doing the old way of playing it. And I was very attracted to the music of the 20s and 30s and 40s, sort of that era. And I recall being an African-American saxophone player in Chicago and who died in an alleyway from a drug overdose, was taking drugs to, I guess, deal with life, What was interesting for me now, so seeing that addiction issue, cut off creativity, was I didn't particularly latch onto addiction myself in this lifetime, but I definitely was around addicted people and did the enabler dance for quite some time, And it was like that also affected my creativity. And it's really interesting now because I was a musician for a long time, and I'm getting back into sound editing now and whatnot to do broadcasts and podcasts. And it took me a long time to get back into the thing that I love, which is the music of the voice, us talking right now. So it was very interesting because I thought, okay, that explains a lot about me having some feelings coming from that of abandonment. I think the person had abandonment. I think there was a cutoff of the creativity that could have been, because of some succumbing to drugs. And the enabling thing I definitely see as some past leaching into the present. So I'll just throw that at you and see what you think.
Oh, absolutely. I can absolutely validate, all of that, and also validate the fact that, you got stopped, you were in this cab, and, it was taking a long time, and, you were in the right place at the right time for that right reason. You know what I mean? And then the first thing that I heard when you were talking there was completion. So the word completion came up, and, just as we're talking about these cycles that everyone's going through, and everyone's going through this death and rebirth, that's exactly what I feel when you tell me that. I mean, this just happened to you, right? You just had this flashback, and it's all about a completion. So you're really starting to complete any of these enabling energies, giving too much, also completing that past lifetime. I find that the awareness of these past lifetimes only come into our lives once we're ready to release it. So it's not like the awareness of these past lifetimes are a really big shocker to most people, because they're coming up because that person has already dealt with those lessons and is already ready to release it. So right away I can just validate, yes, that absolutely happened to you, and yes, absolutely, you were completing so much, and you have completed that past lifetime by having that flashback. And it actually reminds me of a client of mine who, a very, very similar story, actually. He was a male in a past lifetime, most recent past lifetime, and he was really big into the 60s era. He had one of those wagon buses and the bell-bottom pants, And I think he was like a rocker, a musician or something, and he traveled a lot. And he ended up dying and passing away of an overdose. And he struggled so much with addiction and depression his entire life. He was born right away from that lifetime into this lifetime, like instantly reincarnated. And in this lifetime, once again, very similar to you, he's dealt with friends after girlfriends of them passing away due to drug overdose. And he's always struggled with how much does he influence, how much does he help them, how much does he stand back, and so luckily for him and luckily for you, you didn't get pulled into that in this lifetime again, but it is still pretty intense, to realize these things, realize where we've all come from. And in realizing all these past lifetimes, it really helps us be more compassionate over others who are also in the same position, right? There's absolutely, you have to lose sight of any and all judgment when going into these past lifetimes, because we all start to realize that we are and have been every single one else on this planet. Everyone who is learning their tough lessons right now, we've been there, or if not, we will be there. And that's actually what allows me to help other people with their lessons as well, is that even though I'm just 25, whatever you've experienced, whatever you're going through, guaranteed I've gone through that myself in a past lifetime, and that's where I pull all this information from, is because I'm such an old soul and I've lived so long. And so that's kind of what I picked up on from you experiencing that, is the completion that's happening for you at this time with whatever that is. So maybe sometime tonight or maybe sometime this week, you can kind of sit down and think about the huge cycle that you went through in everything that's related to being that enabler, being around that energy, and disempowering yourself because of that vibration and losing your creativity. And just kind of, forgive that, release it, love it, and then you can move on. But it's so important to recognize those aspects of us that are indeed now fading away, which is also so beautiful.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's good to talk about it, because then I, could step back more and more and see, what leads to addiction behavior. And I think I identified, we were talking about depression, the concept of despair. Despair is, this thing that seems to be quite a bit of as people do release and let go and grieve, losses and that dematerialization process. And despair is kind of like the bottom of the cycle, and where everything feels very fragmented. But in order for our material universe to keep going, some things have to go all the way through the process of entropy and become release. It's releasing the energy of it back to become something new. And so that's one of the things that, when you kind of look at that cycle, you realize that, we're going through this hard, man, I know, I can feel it a lot of times when I'm talking about things like this, that there's a lot of people going through this completely baffling, situation of this, they've defined themselves by who they were in a material sense, the big house or their good job, and like even the way we talk to each other. Well, what do you do? That's totally an interesting question. What do you do for a living? Well, I just live. We're having to change. We'll have to change how we even casually interact with each other based on the realization of what we're letting go of. And I love it that Disney song is so darn popular. My daughter loves it. Let It Go, from Frozen. Yeah. I love that. Let it go. And so we go through that process, and it's like we're kind of individually doing that, but it's like a hundreds monkey thing or tipping point where we're watching. It's kind of icky to watch all this flush out right now in society. People don't even know how to interact with themselves, let alone other people, kind of doing loops of programming, like a robot that's broken, trying to see if I keep looping the same way, am I going to get a different result? Which is the definition of insanity, by the way, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So I mean, is this like kind of? I would guess just based on what you're saying that is a lot of what you're finding out when you talk to other people. And what are some of the mind tools? And I always love to talk about mind tools because we're talking about our programming. We need to find positive mind tools to try to process all of this. The biggest one for me was journaling. I've used that extensively. I did quite a bit of my contactee work in the beginning with journaling. Art, creativity is a big one because that unlocks. We tend to be this or that. I'll do this or I'll do that, when there could be more options, just this or that, binary. Yeah. And creativity goes, hey, I could do this other thing. It's the third or the fourth, fifth, thing you could do. So what are some mind tools that you think has been really helpful with people to get them out of this process or give them some hope or get them to progress?
Yeah, totally. Great question. So the number one thing that I say for everyone when they want to reprogram, and trust me, everyone is reprogramming right now, is, do something new. That's it. You want to reprogram yourself, do something you've never done before. Now, it's so interesting because I try and strive to do this on a daily basis. So I'll go to the same grocery store once a week, every week for years, or however, right? But what I like to do is that I like to take a different route to work or a different route to the grocery store. And then when I'm there, I'll pick up a fruit that I've never had before. I don't know what it tastes like. I don't know even what it is, but I'll buy it and I'll take it home. So I love to change up my reality and try new things all the time. So trying new things actually releases our fear-based mentality of the what if. Oh, well, what if I don't like this fruit? Well, what if I waste that money? Or what if, it makes me sick? Let it go. Take that leap of faith. Trust that your body knows best and your intuition is guiding you, and, try something new. Now, when you really break it down, I break it down into three things. If you really want to try something new, and I suggest everyone does, I suggest in one of these three categories is what you need to try to reprogram your reality. First category is something movement-oriented. What's happening is that we're releasing so much energy so rapidly right now. A lot of people release it through emotions, some aches and pains, some weird physical things, some hot and cold flashes, all of that great stuff. So, but energetically, we're releasing a lot. And taking a light walk at the end of your work shift, light stretching at the end of the day, signing up for yoga is really great. These are all movement-oriented things, maybe signing up for a sport, all movement-oriented things that will help you release energy. So if you want to change your reality, you want to get into something movement-oriented. And the second category that I want to talk about here is, you already mentioned it, creativity. You're so bang on when you're talking about restructuring things. And our whole life, our whole society is so masculine. It's so point A leads to point B. There's a problem, here's a solution. Here's a cause, here's an effect. You have money, you don't have money. It's always the binary. And art, I'm an artist myself, art, creativity, making things, whether it be pottery or sculpting or paint on a canvas. This is a very unstructured form of expression, and that's what we all need. We need to get away from that logical, analytical mindset, and we need to start being more in the flow, more feminine, more intuitive, more empathic, more unstructured. So absolutely creativity. And then the third category, I would suggest if you're like, I want to try something new, I don't know what I want to try. The third category I would recommend is spirituality. Of course, get into something spiritual, whether it be signing up for a workshop or a retreat. Maybe it's a meditation class that you've never thought about doing before. Maybe it's Reiki or Huna healing. So it's thinking about spirituality and energy work. What does that look like for you? What is your own spiritual practice that you want to incorporate into your life? And it doesn't have to be intense, but that's also something new and also something positive that's going to really help you restructure your reality. Now, those are just kind of categories that you can focus on to do new things, but I also have like you said, some tools to help in restructuring reality. Now, as you mentioned, writing is a huge key for many people, but also many people really resist writing. And what I find is that the reason why people resent and resist writing so much is because we're so forced to write about things that are not completely passionate in school, right? Writing has always been a very logical, very structured kind of form of getting a point across. Now, of course, writing has changed over the years, but writing is a great tool for restructuring your reality, because if no one else in your life will support you, then you can support yourself by self-expression. So it's just the best tool for self-love, self-expression, release is through writing. But there's other things that you can do that are also really good. One of them, and this actually just came channeled through me this past week, so I mean, it's great that we're bringing this up. And I just call it color therapy. I mean, it just came channeled. So pretty much what it is that when you have a negative thought or an old programming that comes up, or something that you're reiterating or repeating, ask yourself, first of all, the critical question: does this thought serve me? Most likely, no, the thought doesn't serve you. So then what do? Then you fill your being up with a color. Now, for me, instead of writing my thoughts and my feelings down, colors resonate much more with me. And so for me, if I'm having a really rough day and I need that little pick-me-up, I'll close my eyes and visualize my entire being filled up with yellow energy. And that literally picks my vibration right up. And that's a really good tool that people can use to, once again, feed their souls. Now, for those of you who aren't really totally aware of what each color does or what vibration does, the two that I would say that everyone should focus on is pink for love and for healing, and white, pure white light for, once again, connection, love, healing, channeling, clarity, all of that great stuff. So the color therapy, all you have to do is stop yourself in the middle of your day, fill yourself up with that vibration, that color, that frequency, to take yourself to the next level and to recreate and restructure your reality. And then there's other things like EMF tapping is really good for releasing and restructuring. And then the other thing also is affirmations. So saying certain affirmations to yourself. All affirmations are positive statements in the present moment that you can say to yourself and repeat that are really going to help heal and restructure the programming of your mind. But once again, just to reiterate, the only thing anyone needs to do to reprogram and restructure your mind is to be aware of your thoughts. Once you're aware of your thoughts, you can then discern consciously whether those thoughts are serving you or not serving you. Guaranteed, if you haven't really been aware of your thoughts before, 99% of the people out there, your thoughts are not serving you. The more awareness you have towards your thoughts, the more you can stop your pre-programming and really implement these tools and devices to reprogram to, once again, create the reality that you want to create.
Well, that was a whole basket full of good stuff. Thank you. And I'm kind of laughing on a couple of things. I have a channel, the book that was called Thoughts Equals Matter, and it was talking about thoughts being things. I mean, that's when you're thinking or your thoughts is interacting with that level, that pre-manifestation level, and you can do a lot with that. And it is so important to kind of see what's happening there. And then I was kind of laughing about the yellow thing, the color yellow. The reason why, and this will go into my next question, is I was doing a meditation with a group of people, and I was pretty deep in, and this being showed up. And to describe it, it would have been like a human beluga whale hybrid. So it looked kind of fishy and kind of human. And I happened to be doing this meditation on a boat over water, so I think that's why I got the whale energy. And this being was dressed like a Tibetan monk but in yellow tones. And it said to me in a very deep voice, it's very tall, it's about 9 feet tall. It was standing on the lower deck of the boat, and I'm on the upper deck of the boat, and it was like halfway in between, energetically where I felt it. And it says, "You need more yellow." And it started to pass it's kind of a cross between a hand and a flipper over me, back and forth, and I felt like I was in a big yellow cocoon or something like that. And then later on looked up, what the colors mean, the chakra colors kind of mean, and I had to agree that is an area that I need to work on that's always been a little problematic for me. And then just about a year ago, I got quite ill from a virus, and not only did this being show up, but he brought some others with him. And they literally wrapped me up in an energy cocoon with strands and just stayed there till I fell asleep. And it was a true turning point in my attitude and of course in my energy, because I was feeling very despairing. I didn't think that I would ever get over this thing that I had. And my guides started to come in, and one of my guides is always a bit sardonic. He says, wow, your energy's really low. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. It was kind of funny. But what I wanted to make a question out of that is that you and I both have made contacts with our guides. And I've had people ask me, how they made contacts with their guides. And my initiation to that was to do automatic writing, which was not, someone takes over my hand and writes on the page. It was, I'd hear a few words at a time, I'd write them down in my journal, and then go back and read it. And that was the first way I began to channel, and that got me in contact with my guides. And once I got the energy signature of that, I was able to have more telepathic, expanded contact. If somebody's interested in that and they really want to make contact and they're working through blockages and whatever, what would be a way that they could participate in it? Because I don't think it's so much of a reach out and scream to the universe and kind of thing. I think it's getting blocks out of the way mostly. But what would be some tools that you would recommend, and what kinds of things do guides do for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first of all, in order to contact your guides, you do have to be a certain level of clear. And that being said, it's because your ego mind, right, your human, your pre-programming, will literally blind you from all the contact and communication that your guides are already giving you. So it's not the fact that your guides are or aren't contacting you. It's the fact that you are or aren't consciously aware of it, right? So our spirit guides are contacting us at all times. Just like we are always astral traveling, we just choose whether or not to be aware of these things. So in quieting your ego mind, in quieting your human, and quieting the judgment, the reaction, expectation, that's when we start to really listen to what the guides have to say and really listen to that consciousness. So that's, if you really want to contact your guides and receive messages from them, you have to quiet your mind. Easiest way to do that, once again, is meditation. That's like the streamlined way of doing it, and it is kind of boring, and it takes a really long time to get good at it. But eventually, you'll be in a meditative state at all times. Therefore, you will always be receiving messages from your guides. And so that being said, there was something else that I wanted to mention. Okay, so how I started receiving messages from my guides and understanding who they were was through art. So I started painting these interdimensional beings. And when I painted these interdimensional beings, I started asking questions. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I asked just intuitively, just in general, I just kind of asked in my head. I said, well, who is this? Who did I just paint? And intuitively, my guides just gave me the answer, and they telepathically communicated to me, and they said, well, that's you. And I said, okay, that's cool. And then they proceeded to say, well, that's you, but that's also us. And I said, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And that actually leads me to a really good point about spirit guides, which is if you really want to connect to them, you have to absolutely connect to yourself. So if you really want to know who your, especially interdimensional spirit guides are, you can ask, well, who am I? And at first, and I always tell my clients this, when you're talking to your guides, I mean, this is the main way that I would say connect with your guides is through talking to them. It can be verbally talking to them. It could be telepathically talking to them. I always tell my clients that at first, it's going to be a one-way conversation. You're not going to be able to hear them clear as day. And I also let my clients know that everyone receives information in a different way. For me, all my information is visual. I will receive crazy, trippy images, visuals, to give me the information. Other people hear things, they're clairaudient. Other people, they feel things in their body, right? Other people love automatic writing, which is really great. So just know that not every method is going to be for you when channeling and receiving messages from your guides. And then to answer your second question is, what can guides do for people? I mean, guides are exactly that. They are simply guidance for you. Biggest thing to know about guides, especially when you start to hear them back, is they are not the end-all to be-all of all knowledge, okay? These guides are still contained within dimensions. Any being, any consciousness that is contained within a dimension still has a limited view. Even if that view is a little bit higher or maybe a little bit more awake than we are, we have to realize and understand that we've been there too. We have just as much knowledge as they do. We're just not as aware of the knowledge. So once again, take everything from your guides with a grain of salt. Same thing with psychics and energy workers. Take everything we say with a grain of salt. I mean, use your own discerning. Understand what feels right for you. But that's what guides do. They will put things in your physical life. They will put dreams into your mind. They will help guide you on your path so that you can start living the best and most fulfilling life that you can live. But once again, if we're too wrapped up in our ego, if we're too wrapped up in our own mind, if we're too wrapped up in our attachments and reactions, then we're never able to feel the synchronicities, see the synchronicities, and hear our guides out and be guided in the right direction. And that's why people are like, oh, why does God hate me? Why do my guides hate? Why does the universe hate me? And no, it's actually, they're not abandoning you. They're not leaving you. You're just not listening to them because there is too much of that attachment and reaction. And that's what people need to realize as well. So hopefully that kind of answered your question, and that was a nice little overview of guides.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I had a teacher tell me to take off your wow goggles. When you first start making these connections, you're like, wow, am I really doing this? Wow. And there could be a tendency to take it all in and think that you're talking to some kind of angelic high level so high above you that you can't even, comprehend it. And, no, that any being that's in this universe is having its experience just like you are. And it's just like, you have a teacher and you learn from the teacher, and then you grow up and master the skill, and maybe you might become a teacher yourself. Or we're all at that sharing level, in different arenas. And then you might they'll tell you something and you can't relate, like what? Or it doesn't feel right. And that's okay. You don't have to take in everything like you said. It's kind of like having a chat with somebody on social media. I always say it's my invisible friends. I got invisible friends on social media, and I have invisible friends on the INNERNET, internet, right, to run things past and learn from. But, at the end of the day, I got to kind of find my own, how am I going to do it for me, define it for myself and implement it for myself. One thing I want to give you a chance to do here before we get to the end of the show is to talk about your work. You said YouTube. I love YouTube. We were talking about learning something new. Boy, YouTube is so cool that way. I learned a lot of art techniques off of it. I also took my car into a repair shop, and the guy didn't know how to repair that kind of car, so he literally went on YouTube and watched how to repair my type of car, which I thought was incredibly cool. I think that's a new, wonderful tool we have. And I know you said you have a YouTube channel. Just tell us about those kinds of things that you do, any books, whatever projects that you're doing, and your website or where someone can get a hold of you. Your shameless plug moment here. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if the listeners really resonate with who I am and what I'm talking about, and that's really what it comes down to, is a resonation, then you'll absolutely resonate with all the information that I put out there. Once again, this information is not my own. It's for everyone. So I do my best to really give it as much as possible. So I have the YouTube channel. It's just simply Elizabeth April on YouTube. And I put out a new 5-minute long video every single week. It's great. I'm up to about 65 videos. Every video is something different, something channeled from the universe. I talk about pretty much anything and everything, from relationships to past lives to spirit guides to quantum physics, simultaneous time, interdimensional beings, all of that great stuff, once again in just 5-minute long videos, which is pretty cool. And then I also have a website out there. It's elizabethapril.com, pretty straightforward. And you can also book a session directly from me. So I do hour-long sessions, Skype internationally. I also do half-an-hour-long sessions, once again, Skype internationally. And I do personal in-person sessions. And I also do email questions as well if you just wanted a quick answer. And then I also do, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. If you wanted to follow me, once again, it's just pretty much Elizabeth April across the board. And I also put out hour-long Facebook Live videos. So that's every Monday at 5:55 Eastern Standard Time. And I actually channel all of your questions live on the air. So it's getting pretty busy at this point. If you do want to ask a question, I suggest asking it right away, just typing it in the comments box. And I'm up to about 2,000 views a week on that, which is really fantastic. People are thirsty, hungry for the information, and I'm so happy to provide it. So once again, just Elizabeth April, pretty much type it in the internet, you'll find it, I'll be there, and there's a lot of really valuable information that's out there as well. And I'm currently working on a book. It's called Memoirs of a Hybrid, and it should be out hopefully by the end of next year. So.
Oh, that was great. That's a lot of resources for people. So as we kind of close out the show, I actually would like to ask if you can share, one of your guides can share with us through you, because I know I'm always getting, something to think about every day nearly from them. What would be something that you could share with everybody, kind of up to the moment, information from those other realms that would be important and helpful to people today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I would kind of just conclude with, leave people off with, is the number one message that I've been receiving from the Galactic Federation and many of my spirit guides, which is now, first of all, now is not the time to settle. So don't settle for your relationship. Don't settle within your job. Don't settle in your living situation. It's time for you to really thrive and strive for what it is that makes essentially you the person, the human, the being, the soul that you are on this planet at this time. It's time to really strive for who that person is and really get back to that authentic being. So, first things first is don't settle for the life that you've been living, because if it's not satisfying and it's not fulfilling, then it's not helping you and it's not helping humanity. So don't settle. And the second thing, and it actually correlates to not settling, which is choice is so important. So our free will as a human, as a population, is so important, and it's something that we need to exercise a lot more often. And right now, we're not really exercising our ability to choose and our ability to have free will. So once again, going back to reinventing your reality, switching up your reality, doing something new on a daily basis is so important for injecting this new blueprint of your reality into your life. And what you can do to do that is choose. In every single moment, make that conscious decision. Do I talk to this person? Do I talk to that person? Do I choose this job or that job? Do I walk down the street this way or that way? It's so important to bring that conscious awareness to every single moment of your life and to, once again, empower yourself with the option of choice. Now is the only time for you to be consciously aware of your existence, of your reality, and to essentially choose the reality that you want to live. And that power is not in the hands of the government. It's not in the hands of the institution, the education system. It's not in the hands of your parents or your friends. That choice, that reality is in the hands of you. And absolutely everyone can live a happy, abundant, spiritual, in tune, and connected life. We just have to choose to live that life. And that would be the absolute number one thing that everyone needs to be aware of. Don't settle for your life, don't settle for your reality and your old existence, and start to choose the new reality and the new existence that you really do want to live.
Oh, that is some good stuff, and it even is about choosing how to react to things or choosing your attitude, because then you can take some ownership of it, and then when you take that ownership, you have the malleability. You can now, move the pieces on the board a little bit instead of feeling victimized, like, you can't do anything. And we really have to empower ourselves, and it really has to come from within. So we've got a minute or two for you to give last remaining thoughts that you want to share. And Elizabeth, April, this has been incredibly fun. Friday conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Is any last words?
No, I think everyone's got, a pretty big mouthful at this point, but I just wanted to say thank you so much, Karen, for hosting tonight, and I'm so glad that you did, because it definitely seems like there's a connection, and maybe we'll be co-creating in the future. So thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Oh, I really appreciate having you with us, and it was a very positive experience, and we even talked about economics and didn't get down in the dumps. I think that's great. So thank you so much, and I would like to say to everyone, I love that. Try something new. Try something new tomorrow. I might have to go get some kind of weird fruit and see if I like it or not. That's awesome. So good words. Thank you. And I want to tell everybody that to watch for this episode to be uploaded on aquarianradio.com, and you can go there for many of the past episodes. There's a wealth of options there to look at, lots and lots going on. I'm sure we'll hear from Jana and Sasha Lessin, their experiences at the MoveOn Symposium. And with that, I want to say aloha to everyone, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to Aquarian Radio Friday nights, The Experiencer Path. Thanks to the artists from freemusicarchive.org, Ketsa for Live With No Fear, and Scott Holmes, Mother Nature. You have been listening to the Aquarian Radio Network.
Medicine is one of the most difficult, fast-paced, yet rewarding paths you can take. You can set out on your own and navigate the student loans, the bureaucracies, and systems that define a typical medical career. Or you can apply for the U.S. Army's Health Professions Scholarship Program and launch yourself into a medical career like no other. Your tuition will be completely covered, and when you graduate med school, you'll learn from and work with some of the most elite minds in medicine. That's the Army difference. Learn more and apply today at goarmy.com/HPSP.